Hello, welcome everybody. My name is Dipankar Mukherjee and I'm the ensemble member and co-artistic director of Pangea World Theatre. On behalf of Art to Action and Pangea World Theatre, I welcome you to this amazing event, and I'll introduce the artists later on, but we always begin first by acknowledging the land we are on. Pangea World Theatre and Art to Action acknowledge that we are on the sacred traditional lands of the first peoples of Turtle Island. For Pangea, it is an honor to live, work, and create art and community alongside Dakota, Ojibwe, and all First Peoples in the Twin Cities of Minnesota.
Thank you, Dipankar. Hello, everyone. I'm Andrea Asaf, the Artistic Director of Art to Action, and I am zooming in from Tampa, Florida. Art to Action is on the land of the Seminole and Tocobaga peoples, and we pay respect to Indigenous people, First Nations, past, present, and future, as we grow in our work of decolonization and build relationships at the speed of trust. We endeavor to move from acknowledgement to action. And we invite you, if you're in the Zoom room, in the chat, to acknowledge the first peoples of the lands that you are currently on, and to continue to learn more with all of us. Thank you, Dipankar.
Welcome, Andrea. It's always wonderful to have your colleagueship and you as a thought partner in everything that we do. And now is the most exciting part of today's gathering. It is our privilege to present to you an artist whom I deeply, deeply, deeply respect, who's a friend, who's a family, who's a brother, Teo Castallanos. His bio is on the chat. You can see he brings with him 25 years of rigor, 25 years of devising work, 25 years of choreography, community building, and in every possible way, Teo teaches me rigor, the rigor of work. Teo teaches me how to be deeply rooted in his spirituality and how spirituality is interweaved with everything that Teo, I've seen you bring on stage. Very few artists. Teo works like a martial artist, zones in before he creates, and he's in a world of his own and completely connected with the community. That's Teo. To me, Teo is family, Teo is rigor, Teo is a brilliant choreographer, Teo is a theater maker, a community builder. Teo has worked in different parts of the world, and among many of his awards, well-deserved, Teo is a recent Doris Duke Artist Award winner of 2021. You can read all his accomplishment, 25 years of accomplishment. And in this world of celebrityness and what Fanon talks about horizontal hostility, it's my privilege to get to know an artist like Teo, who truly, when we invited Teo to do a masterclass, the first thing that came out of Teo's lips was, "I ain't no master, I'm a student of life." So I share with you this student of life who has got monumental experience and a powerhouse to share his work with us. Teo, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for doing this. It's an honor and a privilege to have you here.
Thank you, brother Dipankar. I have much love for you and enough respect. Beautiful introduction. So yes, first I will start by saying my name, Teo Castallanos, as Dipankar has already established, but my pronouns are he, him, his, and I would like to also, on behalf of both of my performance companies, which you'll get to meet through video in a minute, I would like to state the following land acknowledgement. Our connection to the ancestry of this land and the lands of our ancestors guides and informs our work. We acknowledge the Tequesta, Miccosukee, Calusa, Seminole, and Taino peoples and the land we create on. We stand in solidarity, honor, and respect for all of our ancestral connections from Africa to the New World and to all points in between. So with that, actually, I will be speaking on how I came across this life endeavor as an artist to actually decolonize the theater, and began doing so even before I knew that I was doing it. I will begin when I was in a theater history class, and the professor walks in and he says, the very first day, he said, well, theater probably began in Egypt. However, we have no written records, so we will begin with the Greeks. And in this theater history class, we went from the Greeks through the Dark Ages and the Renaissance and Shakespeare, and then theater history 2 jumped to the Americas, specific North America, and went on to talk about American theater. Now, from that very first day, something rose in my being, not knowing or not being able to identify it at the time, because I was 20 something. But that statement really shook me to my core, not knowing why. Today I know that it was all my ancestors in me screaming, saying, this is a lie. This is not theater history. This is European theater history, which should be the name of the course of the title. And then American theater history. But in my college years, in my BFA, in my theater training, I never learned about kabuki or no, katakali, or the deep dance and mass traditions of Indonesia and Bali. None of it. So as post-graduation, I continued, of course, my own education, and began creating devised work, because it was very clear to me from those very first days in the theater department that the structure was a colonial structure, was a Eurocentric structure, and that my voice was not actually not only not heard, but the attempt was made to colonize my voice. I constantly heard things like, could you lose your accent? Could you speak neutrally? One of the ways I began this rebellion towards this monolithic view of theater was by I actually left that university and went on to another one. And when I was at that university, I began only doing works by Puerto Rican playwrights. I am from the Taino territory of what today is called Puerto Rico, which brings a lot of, 3 distinct ancestral lineages that run in my blood and my DNA. I did all Puerto Rican works. Everything I directed in the studio theater, everything, every scene that I did, even if that Puerto Rican was US based, right? Whether it was Jose Rivera, Miguel Piñero, that was the work that I was doing. I had not yet identified, for lack of mentors and for lack of just not knowing, right? I had not yet identified that this began my journey of decolonizing theater. So that's how I began, and I just began creating devised works. I began with doing performance poetry. Today, what they call spoken word, which I'm actually horrible at, but I can coach it actually. And that's how I realized the other way that I was going to decolonize was by creating my own work and not being dependent on someone casting me or hiring me as a director. But I was determined to create my own work, and therefore really decolonize this Eurocentric view of what of what we call theater. So with that, I'm actually going to show you two clips. The first one is actually my my new work. So let me explain the video that you're about to see. Is actually, this video was shot during lockdown. We had been pretty much in lockdown for months. We had not really, we had not been rehearsing. The Knight Foundation, who gave us the seed money, gave us a generous grant actually for this project, asked us, asked if they could shoot, you know, a video of a work in progress. And I said, well, here's what we're doing. I'm meeting with them one-on-one. We actually had started rehearsing. We were meeting one-on-one. One performer would come in. I would work with her. She would leave. Then the next one would come. I would work with her for an hour, and then she would leave. And then I would take, you know, a lunch break. And then the third one would come in, and she would leave. And that's what we were doing during the pandemic. When we felt comfortable enough, because it was a very long time. I'm going to say around 9 months, where we just didn't go anywhere. We didn't step into the theater space. And I must admit that I had real difficulties trying to work on Zoom. And this is actually the first lecture or demonstration or masterclass or whatever you want to call it. This is the first one that I do. And I thank Dipankar and Meena for that, and also Andrea at Art to Action. And all of Pangea. Thank you. So Knight Foundation said, hey, can we shoot a work in progress? I said, sure, here's my schedule. This is how they rotate. I do this every Thursday. And they were like, well, can you send over the script? And I sent the script. And then the filmmakers, they were like, yo, this is dope. We don't want to just shoot a rehearsal. Can we kind of like make a video, sort of a short film out of one of the monologues? And I said, sure. So this is how this came to be about. So if you could, and let me just, I will read real quick the description. The title is F-Punk Junkies, is a woman-centered Black and Brown ensemble-driven dance theater piece created by Teo Castallanos D Projects with choreography by Michelle Grant Murray and Augusto Soledad. This new work brings the company's Afro-Rican punk aesthetic to the forefront of our storytelling and digs deeply into our collective ancestral roots. The text is adapted from Orisha mythology, Black and Puerto Rican folk tales, and driven by Black punk music. And if you could please show that clip. Thanks.
This story happened on a different kind of island. One not so tropical.
Where certain times a year, the ground is covered in sheets of white, like cotton. The same shade of the swindlers who took this island from the Lenape.
Years after sand bamboozling, I walked among the peoples, undetectable and indescribable. Shifting through several subculture incarnations, I couldn't decide who I wanted to be, so I landed on half punk and half skinhead. Now hold up. Let's set the record straight. Skinheads. A youth culture emerging out of England was a working class movement consisting of
Jamaican rude boys,
Black immigrants,
Black British, and some white folks.
We were heavily influenced by the deep rhythms of ska, dub, rocksteady, reggae, and soul.
Please get back to the story.
Yes, back to the story. So not being able to make up my mind, I manifested as half punk and half skin. This side punk and this side skin. And then I proceeded to walk straight down the middle of the park where both the skins and punks hung out and managed to confuse the fuck out of them. The punks on this side said,
"Who's that punk come through here?"
and the skins on the other side said,
Never seen them before, but they wasn't punk. They was a skin.
Nah, they was a punk.
You can't tell skin when you see one.
They was a punk.
I don't see a punk. I see a punk right here.
Take off the glasses.
It was a punk. S-K-I-N.
What's going on with you?
Skinhead. You dumb head. Don't you know
That's a punk.
Let off.
That was a punk.
Back to the dang story.
What the hell wrong with y'all? Y'all stupid.
This little misunderstanding was what began the whole punk versus skinhead beef. It erupted in violence, appropriation, political splits, whitewashing, chaos, scary ass shows, and enough brutality to stain this island black and blue. With so much rage when you entered the mortal of the mosh pit, you took your life into your own hands. Fists flew from thunderclouds, dragons scorched anarchy signs, and the devil greeting your falling on the dance floor. Amplifiers began to squeal, making your ears bleed. Guitar strings broke, and overturned cymbals severed the roots of our musical tree. And everyone lost their memory. No one knew how they had gotten there.
What did you do?
I went to the ocean. I sat under a palm tree where the four elements spoke to me. 16 palm nuts fell from above and knocked me on my damn head. The message was, I should visit 16 villages where people have lost their memories. So from the Bronx to Bayamon to Botswana and Brixton, I traveled collecting stories from elders, bringing 16 tales back to our warring tribes. And they began to remember. They recalled when the beating of their hearts synchronized with the griot stories. They remembered the shaman's dance that transformed their feet into boundless expression. The vortex of the mosh pit began to swirl in the opposite direction, and when someone fell, instead of being trampled, they were rushed with hands that lifted them to their feet and planted the dark martins on the ground. Tattoos appeared inside forearms of punks and skins dancing together. We remembered where the music came from and who it belonged to. When memories restored, visions return, the three dimensions unify, and all violence stops.
Oh, okay. So that was our current work in progress, and now we're going to show a clip of my other company, which is so let me say that one of the things that I've done throughout my career, and also in this in this manifesto, corporal manifesto of decolonizing theater, I also rebelled against this idea that you must have this formal university Eurocentric training in order to be an artist. And we'll talk about that more in a bit. So for me, I believed that you didn't, of course. That being said, I've always encouraged. I got a BFA. I stopped there because I decided I would give myself my own MFA in my research and my studies and my practice. So in that process, I have worked with different communities. One, which you're about to see, where is it's a company of all Puerto Rican men. There's 3 of them, 2 of which were Iraq war veterans. How that came about was that I was asked if I was interested in teaching Iraq war veterans some writing and the performing of their writing, i.e. some spoken word. And it was to be done, the workshops were to culminate in an informal reading in April, which is National Poetry Month. And I said, sure, I would love to I would love to work with that population that I've never worked with. It ended up being, it didn't begin as all Puerto Rican men, but it ended up being all Puerto Rican men. The third one in the company is a Vietnam War, not war veteran, but Vietnam era veteran. So we created this piece, and but my nature is, of course, to be get a little more performative. So we created a piece that was about 45 minutes long, and everyone got really excited, and they said, you guys should continue working together. And I was like, sure, I'd be happy to continue working with these men. And they actually didn't sign up like to become a theater company. They just wanted to work through some of the PTS, right? Through some of the moral injury, through writing and performing it. They wanted to exorcise the horrors of war. So we applied for a grant, and actually, again, the Knight Foundation, this was right? This was, I think, 2015. Knight Foundation also gave us a generous grant to set that off, and we created a piece called A Mall, which I did find an old description here. We're currently touring that piece, but the old description says direction and drama, a provocative and inspiring spoken word theater piece that delves into the societal impact of war. Direction and dramaturgy by Teo Castallanos, written and performed by military war veterans, combat hippies, with headbanging original Afro-Rican punk soundtrack produced by DJ Brimstone 127 and live percussion by Angel Ruben Rodriguez. Amal examines the impact of war with equal parts humor and urgency. It explores a quest for meaning, purpose, and identity sought through enlisting in the military, and shares the unifying experiences of combatants and non-combatants as people of color. Tough and tender, Amal relays stories of veterans, refugees, and civilians' adjustment to life after war. This all Puerto Rican theater company places Puerto Rico's colonial status, cultural, and military heritage center stage. So you could please play that clip.
My job was to help both guards and prisoners get through their time at Abu Ghraib while getting through it myself. They carried toys and clothes to family visitation, where they held a baby girl whose smile reminded me that love is pure and hope, Amal, is real. Protect my people! Ready, aim, fire!
Couple of, sweaters and stuff. Just, we thought that it's only gonna be 2 months or so, and then we will come back.
Trying to drop knowledge. Then I'm gonna drop a needle to these tracks.
What you need to drop is the money in my pocket for that bag you copped.
We struck como lightning, and within minutes they were overrun and waved white flags of surrender. Next, we invaded the US! Post office, that is. Payback, puñeta. The hurricane destroyed the local church, so they sang outside.
As long as we breathe,
Esperanza is alive.
Yes, so we're back. So I want to continue the conversation, and now that you have a visual of my work, for those of you who have not seen it. So these two pieces actually, the first one again being a more of a short film of the work in progress, is you don't see it, but they are both set in the round, and you did see that in the second piece. And so I've moved into working in the round after identifying that what I have been doing all these years has been decolonizing theater. So this was the ultimate decolonization for me, moving away from the proscenium stage and going back to the storytellers, to the griots of the continent of Africa, to the shamans of what today we call the Americas, to a deep tradition of storytelling, the Jibaros and Criollistas that lived in the mountains of Puerto Rico, and in the Loíza area of Puerto Rico, the African descendants enclave in Puerto Rico that's called Loíza. This is how we told stories, because it was always about communities. What was the incentive? What was the initiative? What was the purpose of theater, of our theater, in the first place? And it was passing down history, knowledge, teaching, healing, and preserving oral traditions, preserving culture. We have been doing this for thousands and thousands of years, something that I had to learn on my own. I had to go in, I had to listen to that DNA screaming that what I was being taught at these universities was not 100% true. It does have its own truth in the Eurocentric canon of theater and in the American-centric canon. But it is not a global truth. And it was always, again, I resented the fact that, one, this is what I was being, the only thing that I was being taught. I don't resent being taught. I love to learn, and I love to learn. I want to learn your history, but I also want to learn about mine and others. That was really important to me. I can't learn one thing at the expense of omitting other histories. That was my beef. To me, that was the ultimate, going into the round, where originally it was about community. It was about community. This is where we came together to share. That's why you see actually at the end of Amal, of the last clip, we do a bombazo, which is, you know, the Afro-Rican rhythm of bomba, where everyone comes and they take solos in front of the drum. And in every city that we go to, that happened in Miami, and I don't think it was really clear in this clip, but I do bring I always hire a woman drummer and dancer to do the first round, right, of the bombazo. And they come in, it's you bow to the drum, and then you throw down, and then people circle in and out, paying respects to the drum. And the drum is something that I've always used. I've used since I was doing, you know, I was working with young people back in the 90s. I had I actually used to play the drum for the company back then. And I also hired, until I found a drummer. And then I also hired a trumpet player. So we would have live music. And back then we were going back to the rituals of we will have processions. We would come in with candles and incense and live music in the honor of our theater making traditions. And this information I found in my DNA, actually. This is where it came from. And I believe that so my practice, as Dipankar said, you know, it is founded in I seldom use the word spirituality, but in a spiritual practice, which is which is called Zen Buddhism, actually. I'm a Zen Buddhist. And in Zen, we talk about, and I have to talk about Zen because it is part of the foundation of my practice. But in Zen, it is said that it's not nature versus nurture, it's nature and nurture. So in other words, I was finding movements in my body that no one had ever taught me. But at some point in my life, I must have seen them. So, and even though I didn't take a bomba class, I've taken them now since, of course, or an Afro-Cuban class, I knew these steps kind of lived in my body, in my DNA. And obviously I must have seen them somewhere. So that visual, right, set off, woke up what was living inside of me. And I had been, and I had this understanding, and that this is what was happening. And also just going back a little bit to the cultural training that I spoke of, that this idea of being, trained in a university. And again, no tea, no shade. I must say that I encourage getting a BFA or an MFA or a PhD, because that opens doors for us, and then we can do what we need to do to further decolonize these systems. Another thing that's been a lifelong, career-long initiative has been, I've always provided opportunities for Black and Brown people. That's been all my company members for going on, almost 30 years, 25, 27, 28, I don't know. So that was really important for me as well, because again, in these institutions, I saw very little opportunity for us. So I decided that I would create these opportunities. I do, just checking my notes real quick. So yes, going back to the storytelling. So I went back to the storytelling. If you see what we're doing, we're telling stories. Actually, every art form, even visual art for me, tells stories, right? It's all storytelling, and where, and we must remember where that comes from. Where that comes from. In the first video, F-Punk Junkies, there's also, it goes even a little bit further, decolonizing not only theater, but music. That piece is a reminder of the misconceptions, right? The misinformation that we're given about skinhead culture. The minute we hear skinhead, we think of Nazi skinheads or neo-Nazis, right? Because that is what the media loves to portray. Yes, but let me tell you that the neo-Nazi, that the racist Nazi was just another gross form of cultural appropriation. Because the original skinheads were a working class movement of mixed race that began in urban England, in London, and highly influenced by Jamaican culture. Highly influenced. The music, the music of preference was ska. So we go back, and even further back, we actually tell. So I adapted these stories, and I'm going to ask you if you recognize that story specifically as soon as I open it up for discussion. And I'm almost there, I believe. So that story is an adaptation, and I'm going to ask you if anyone recognizes it. And I've also adapted the Robert Johnson story as a reminder that rock music is Black music. Hip hop, jazz, American art forms, jazz, specifically Black, hip hop, Black and brown, all along the line, somewhere along the line, have been culturally appropriated as well. and going back to the recognition is really important to me. So I will say, let me look at my notes real quick, because we will get into the discussion. I do want to share one other thing that my attempt in my creation of this work, and that's the other thing is that, yes, I've never been able to create something that's not socially relevant. I remember once, so the phrase creating arts for art's work is kind of it's kind of twisted, because I believe that one time that, oh, you can't create for art's sake. We got to create art for social justice. But in the light of what we were just what I was just saying, the reason why we had theater in the first place was for healing, knowledge, identity, cultural traditions, so on and so forth. So art for art's sake, what is the sake of art? I was asked this once I was in a meeting, I think it was Philadelphia, and Alban from Pregones said, I said, nah, he says, he said something like, I create for art's sake. And I said, I don't believe you. What you mean? And he dropped that knowledge on me. What is the sake of art? So what is the sake? Why do we create? So at Punk Junkies, actually, I try to create something that I said, I'm just going to create, for once, I want to create something with no social justice message. I just want to, in the vein of punk, but punk was a revolutionary movement. And when I found myself writing, I said, the political statement is going to be made by the bodies on stage. But I've been doing that for a long time. So yes, that is happening. The political statement, the social statement is made by the bodies on stage. But as I found myself writing, I could not get away from it. I could not get away from it. I could not get away from it from the life of me. And I must speak. And it just spoke. And I know that was the ancestors as well. So I'm going to read, I want to just read you something really quick, a couple of quotes. This is from, and these two books, actually, I just got these two books. One is actually an anthology by my friend, Michelle Grant Murray, who's actually in my new piece. If you know her, you saw her in it. She's a choreographer, dancer, and where she speaks about, and this is, I read this, and when I was like, Michelle, oh my God, this is exactly what I've been saying. And she goes, yes, I know, because we're working together now for the first time. She speaks of dance, but you could easily take out dance and put in theater in this. Dance has existed from the beginning of time. The physical reality of dance carries the history, culture, and dynamics of all aspects of humanity. The moving body is a historic physical manifestation of life. This philosophical statement crosses the boundaries of the Western thought and perspective of dance. I believe that dance speaks to the spiritual, intellectual, ancestral, mental, emotional, economic, environmental, and social dynamic of an individual's collective identity. And it goes on, but for the sake of time, I don't know how much time I have. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I just saw in the chat. Thank you. The title of the book is Beyond the Surface. My bad. I thought you were able to see that. And then I recently learned about another book. And these are within the last year. And as I was reading the introduction, the book is titled Black Acting Methods. As I was reading the introduction, I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I've been saying. And I called Dr. Keisha Abraham. She was the one who plays like the Yemaya archetype in the second video that you saw. And she actually happens to be Kyle Abraham's sister. An interesting note. in this introduction by Sherelle D. Luckett and Tia M. Schaefer, they say that most acting classes in the United States of America operate with a Eurocentric theoretical framework of performance, while ushering actors through the exploration of emotionality and embodied renaissance. Oftentimes, in the majority of US acting classrooms, just like in other subject areas, whiteness overly and covertly pervades the text and linguistic structures, and those who do not share a white lineage or hue are decentered, misaligned, and exiled from a theater history that they rightfully co-constructed. For instance, though there are multiple theories on the origins of theater, the ones that places the origins of theater in Africa is rarely told. And the one that is most taught begins with the Greeks, my experience at that university. However, long before the Greeks, wall paintings, drawings in African caves suggest that humans participated in spiritual rituals and were theatrical in nature. The shamans, actors, dressed in religious clothing, costumes, and enacted rituals, scripts to the tribal members, audience. I'll stop there. And I do want to share one last thing, and that is that it is not the scope of actually of this like them, but I will say that let us not forget that we inter-are, right? There was a quote, and I was going to get it from someone in Pangea, and I forgot who it was because I got multiple emails and my week has been really, really crazy. But it reminded me of that we inter-are, that I am not separate from you, you are not separate from me. That the sun that we all are dependent on, outside of us, lives outside of us, lives inside of us. If the sun stops shining, we stop living. The water that we have to drink every day, that 75% of our human composition is the same water inside our bodies and outside our bodies. My water is your water is my water. The air that we breathe, we share it. Same breath that I have is your breath. And our earth, the calcium in my teeth and my bones are the same calcium in the minerals outside. Same calcium in your teeth and your bones. So we share this planet, we share this earth, and we I have a line in a show that I premiered in 2011 that I said, how can I be free if my arm is still in prison? So as long as one of us is not free, we're all still in prison. So we work together. And again, you know, and that goes across all spectrums of humanity, Black, white, Asian, whatever, indigenous. We are all truly one. And that's the best way that I can try to explain it without sounding too new agey. I really want to explain the science behind how my well-being is dependent on your well-being, and vice versa. If you suffer, I suffer. If you're happy, I'm happy. And I hope that together we can continue to create happiness through our understanding, through our decolonizing, through our self-discovery of who we are, where we're from, and where we're going, because the future is now, and we can heal the past by healing our now, because all my ancestors whose shoulders I stand on live in me, and they rejoice when I rejoice. And my children and my students, the next generation, we can also heal as well. through our work. So I thank you so much. We can talk a little bit now. Y'all could share now. Ashe, thank you.
Teo, would you like to make an invitation for folks to join the conversation?
Oh, I thought, I'm sorry, I thought that I just did.
Okay, I just want to clarify, you can also see in the chat, if you would like to participate in the conversation, please turn your camera on and let Teo know that you have a question or something you'd like to say. And just so you know, if you do participate, we are being live streamed, but we would love to hear from you and see y'all who are in the Zoom room in conversation with Teo.
I'm trying to keep up to all the messages now that I'm not speaking. I'm trying to read really quick, but yeah, please feel free to speak up.
I don't have a question per se, but I'd like to say that you are very inspiring. And siendo puertorriqueña, igual que tú, being Puerto Rican as you are, and in the work that I'm trying to do as writing my own show and writing my own piece, just what you have said to right now has been very inspiring and very, it has hit me in the heart, man. En verdad, me siento como que, okay, ahora sí. Just thank you.
Gracias, mija. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
Hi, Teo. Thank you so much for providing this class for us. We're so happy and excited to have you here. I also just wanted to say, I guess, as someone who's like younger, I feel like you're such a well of knowledge in terms of like what you have to say. So I guess that's my question. Like, what would you say to young theater makers who are watching this either on HowlRound or here, you know, if we're lucky enough to be here with you in the Zoom? What's the advice that you would say that you would have for us specifically regarding working with communities that are maybe already vulnerable or maybe don't have that connection to theater that maybe some of us do who have been doing it for a while? How can we invite other people into that practice? Do you have advice on that?
You know, accessibility is a big issue, right? No doubt. That being said, and again, it's part of why I always have Black and brown folks in my companies. We only need two things for theater, and those two things are a performer and an audience, and that can happen anywhere. And we can tell our stories anywhere. I also want to say that we must, whatever we choose to do, whether it be, you know, becoming a theater maker or you know, a doctor, a healer, we must be very diligent about our practice and the knowledge that we seek, that we must acquire, right? We must dig deep into knowledge and history, and then work really hard, no matter what, and be relentless, be diligent, be concentrated, and be compassionate towards yourself first, and then towards others. That's what I can say to young folks. You must be diligent, and also seek those who, you know, who came before you, right? We stand on the shoulders of a millennial of ancestors, of griots and shamans, but a lot of those folks are still alive. A lot of those folks are still working. A lot of those folks will be honored to help you in whatever way they can. And I think, you know, part of that diligence, part of that training, part of that knowledge, that's more valuable than really booking a gig. That's history. That's your training. That's your cultural training. And if it comes from an elder, you know, what better source? Does that make sense? I hope. Hey, Carl.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
So good. I'm so blessed to be in your presence once again. I guess what I'm thinking about is how dynamic your work is and fierce, and how you also balance it with this, you know, Zen Buddhist lifestyle. One question is, you know, can you talk about artist self-care and what you do to keep yourself balanced or, you know, in balance as you move through it? And then another question I guess I have is, looking forward, I know we talked about the inter-R and being socially relevant. What do you think are the most important things and messages going forward as we create to keep in mind?
Yeah, those questions may be answered with one, right? But okay, so I'll start with one answer, or maybe not. But I will say that yes, absolutely, 100%, 1000% self-care is vital. Those who know me know that my self-care is real important to my well-being. You know, like many of us, we come from difficult histories, right? Difficult backgrounds, difficult upbringings, and that I know that's certainly true in my case. And I've had to work through a lot. We live in a culture that tends to run away from itself. We're constantly looking, you know, if we're not self-medicating through whatever, through drugs, alcohol, shopping, entertainment, be it what it may, we have difficulties sitting with ourselves and with what's going on with us. And it's difficult to do this work if you don't stop and listen to yourself and to your ancestors. We must stop and listen, and therefore, as you very well know, meditation is a deep practice. I'm an early riser, not because I like being up. I like getting up early, not because I like getting up early, because I like being up early. There's a difference. Because people say, oh, you like getting up early. No, that's a fallacy. I do not like getting up early. I struggle when that alarm clock goes off at 4:30. I struggle. I'm like, oh God, it's 4:30 already. But if I push myself out of bed, when I push myself out of bed, then that feeling is immediately transformed to gratitude and joy, because now it is quiet. Now it is still dark, and I go into my practice. 40 minutes of meditation, about another 40 to 45 minutes of yoga, and then I sit with nature. And that's another thing that's extremely important to our well-being is communing with nature on a daily. I have a beautiful garden that I've cultivated in the last 4 to 5 years. And I spent a lot of time out there, and I spent a lot of time out there during the pandemic. And there's studies and studies and studies that have been done about the importance of nature to our well-being. Again, so, and I could go into that, but you know, I for the sake of time, I won't. But it is extremely important. We heal faster. It makes us happier. I'll tell you one quick story. I was in New York City in rehearsal. It was early, you know, it was just after February, probably early March, and it was cold. And I was in the city and I was rehearsing, and then for whatever reason, I got really, really sad. And I decided after rehearsal, I would go for a walk. And I walked to Central Park. And before I even got into the park, when I was across the street and I saw all the trees, the sadness immediately was lifted. So that's part of self-care: communing with nature, meditation, exercise, and being kind. I will also say, I'm on the road. I'm out till 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. I do not get up at 4:30 because that's also part of self-care. My meditation happens later. It happens at 8:30. We also must remain fluid and be kind to ourselves. Please be kind to yourselves and be compassionate to yourselves, because through that, only then can we really be of help to others. When we are, you know, when we're in the right place, like, you know, when they say, when you're on a plane, if the mask drop, put your mask on first and then assist the other person if they need assistance. You know, I can't say what's the most important issue, but I think that is the most important issue. Self-care. Therefore, we can move forward into whatever issue that speaks to us, whatever cause that causes the loudest. We move in that. I think that what's most important is answered individually, and that will happen when we take the time to look internally and really become centered, and have that self-care and compassion for ourselves. It's vital.
Teo, hello.
Hey,
how are you doing?
Good. How's it going?
Good. I'd like to ask you, sort of throw a provocation out there, to ask you about where this intersects with your practice. In the indigenous community right now, there's a lot of conversation about land-based work, about object-based work, and the sense that we as artists are not making things up. We're conduits for what comes through us.
Yes.
And that objects, you know, for the ancestors that are no longer with us, that we don't have access to, the land is there. And the land contains all of that. And the objects that they've passed down contain their prayers, contain their stories, contain a piece of them. So in creating work, you having access to those objects and listening, like you said, deep listening to those objects and the land that you're on or the land that you're from, can be an instant source of material if you listen to it. Is there an intersection between that conversation in the indigenous community and the work that you do?
I'm not sure if I understand your question, Ed.
Do you use objects in your work?
Oh,
right. And what is the impact of that? Listening to the work bubble up, as opposed to that Western concept that as an artist you're making something brand new that the world has never seen. And I'm with my grandson, so thank you for your patience. Thank you, HowlRound. I'm going to mute now and let you sort of dive into that, if you would.
Yes. Okay. I had a thought as you were speaking, Ed. I'll share an experience that I had. I was doing a two-day workshop at Alternate Roots. And the first day was just all, you know, training and you know, and workshopping and whatever. And the performance was to happen. I had no idea what I was going to do. There was a performance, and I had, you know, had to create this in 2 days. And as usual, I had no idea. I rarely walk into a place with preconceived ideas in reference to like whatever blocking or what magic was happening. That can, for me, it only happens in the moment. And sometimes, you know, I'll have a stage manager say, "Okay, what's the plan for today?" And I'm like, I don't know yet. Give me a second. So I had no idea, and I said, "Let me." And I know it was to happen at this on this little shack or gazebo. I don't know what to call it, or boathouse or something on the water, on a lake. And after the workshop, the first day, at the end of the day, I still had no idea what we were going to do, what it was going to look like. And the performance, quote unquote performance, was the next day. So I said, let me walk over to where it is. And as I walked, I don't know, it's a quarter mile or something. I have no idea. I was walking through the woods. And then when I got to the lake, immediately, I'm going to use the phrase, the lake spoke to me. And the idea I didn't create the idea. The idea came from the lake speaking to me. And immediately I saw visions of some of us going into the water, some of us coming out, and all of us dressed in white. And I think I was drumming in the water. So all this came from the land. All this came from it, the external sparked the internal, and the conversation started to happen. So yes, absolutely. Another thing that I've discovered being a theater artist and having to work in windowless, black boxes for, long periods of time, I absolutely must take a break. 3 hours is my maximum. And then I say, time for a sun break, must go outside. My favorite places to rehearse in are all full of windows and natural light and green, as my Zendo is. It's really important to commune with nature. And yes, the land does speak, and that knowledge is there. In West African traditions, when you call upon the ancestors, you stomp on the ground. So to call the ancestors up. So I hope that answers your question. I think it does. Ed?
I have a question, Theo.
Yes.
I know, that your work is really rooted in ritual and deep spirituality. And I also know that when we presented you, I saw you before you took a break before your performance. Like I saw you attack that stage and work. That whole place had this energy. I remember intermediate arts. So I also would like, to share a little bit of the rigor, the discipline with which you work. Like you were like in a zone, like the rigor, the sweat, the power, the muscle. I would love to hear, because sometimes in North America, I feel we hear a lot about self-care, and it becomes a bit as if it's devoid of the rigor, of the work. So I would love for you to talk about, along with self-care, along with deep spirituality, the work that you put in, hours of work that you put in. Could you just share a little bit about that, your discipline and your focus? How do you go deeper into those?
Yes. There's actually two things, right? Again, diligence is so important. In order to be successful at anything, we must be diligent about, our instruments, right? And in Western theater training, they just say you have, three instruments: your body, your mind, and your voice. They're all actually connected, so it's really one, but it's not even really one, because your instruments go beyond your flesh and bones. So in preparation for this ancestral knowledge to speak to us, I believe that we must really be able to be receptive. And in order to be receptive, in order to execute, we must become skilled, right? To become this vessel. I love what Ed said, which is what I've always said in reference. And I know the show you're talking about was the solo, Northeast 2nd Avenue. I get mad nervous before anything. It's gotten worse over the years instead of getting better. And for me, I believe it's because I've been doing this so long. I really never want to take it for granted. I don't like being as nervous as I get. I want to die. I don't do solos anymore because of that. But I just want to die. It's like, why? Because it's not about me. It is about being of service to the work. So we must train diligently to prepare ourselves to do just that. How do you expect to show up for a work not prepared? I don't have that understanding. Another thing that I like to say in this devised theater making world, I've always said the work will call for what it needs. The work will call for what it needs, and that comes from all the collective, from the ensemble. It will tell each and every one of us what it needs, and it becomes really apparent. It becomes really apparent in this process. So I absolutely believe that we are conduits to something much larger than us. That also depends on us for its manifestation. And if something that powerful and that big and that important is dependent on me to help it manifest, I better be ready for that. I better be ready to make that happen. And that comes through training, through relentless training. My practice is not separate from my theater making. It's not separate from my training. I train 6 days a week. I take Sundays off, but 6 days a week, I'm up early, I'm meditating, I'm doing yoga. And then 3 of those days I'm working out. And other times I'm riding the bike, because that keeps me fit, that keeps me prepared for the work that I have been given to do. That's the other thing. I don't believe that I decided to become an artist. I believe it was not my decision at all. It was an ancestral push. That's the way the DNA fell, and then a calling to be of service to something that's much greater than any individual.
Thank you.
So yes, I'm reading here. Any last questions or comments? I'm going through the comments. I'm trying to see if I hope I've covered everyone. Any questions? Anyone that was not acknowledged that would like to speak up, or doesn't have to be a question, could be a comment. I'm going to share. I'll share two more things. Oh, what are you saying, Ed? Ed is asking, do you ask your ensemble members to train in the same way? Yes. However, when they're in the room with me, they do train that way, whether they keep up their personal practice and the ensemble that I'm working with now, which is so exciting. As I read in the description, it's a woman-driven piece, which is the first time I make the effort to work with all women. Because historically, I've been working with all male companies, and it was time. It was time, and it's been such a beautiful experience. But most of them do have their own practice and their own training. Only two of us are I want to say culturally trained dancers. The rest are quote unquote formally trained, but also have, Michelle is one of them. And I quoted, from her book. So that she's in the same mind frame, right? We speak the same language. So I do ask them, yes. And we do train when we're in the room together. And I know that most of them, if not all of them, continue their own personal training. I wanted to say two things. One, what I spoke about in reference to the ancestral knowledge, the DNA, that is today they're calling it the study of epigenetics. And there's two scientific camps. One says yes, absolutely. Not only trauma, but joy is found in our DNA. And then the other camp is not, well, we're not so sure. I'm going to go with the camp that says that it is found in our DNA because I feel it. And then two, we also know, and there's no debate on this, on neuroplasticity. So if you are not training right now, if you have certain blocks for whatever, whether it be training or bad habits or whatever they may be, you decide for yourself. You have the power to change that. You have the power to change that. It's not easy. Nothing, as they say, nothing worth having is easy. You must be diligent, you must train, but you can create brand new neural pathways, create new habits, create new ways of living, new ways of thinking, new ways of doing things, new ways of activism, new ways of self-care and compassion. That is very, very possible. And it is not, a motivational speech. It is the science of neuroplasticity. So please take note of that. You can do it. Yes, we can.
Well, each of those words, brother, it's like it needs to settle. Each of the thoughts that you shared, so rich, so powerful, so guiding. I know there are a few of the artists whom I know who are on the screen, Denise, Leslie, I know Carla, I know Nobuko, Nobuko gets up, and Dora, I've seen them practice. I've seen them prepare for their presentation, and it's fierce, powerful work, and that is not in opposition to the depth of spirituality of these beings. So I remember once Meena had gone to visit Nobuko, and every day Nobuko will get up at 4:30 to practice Kundalini. Regardless of age, regardless of practice, and that really inspires me. And I've seen Dora. They're rigorous artists. So I just want to say on behalf of all of us, Teo, this morning when Nobuko was asked to be the witness to our proceedings, instead of the documentation, and Nobuko, spoke beautiful words, and the question that she asked was, how do we move forward in a world that is so divided? And we have to rise to answer the question. And it is the end of the evening. Your search, your words, the search requires artists like you, who honor the shamans, who honor the griots, who honor the stories, and that's the guide. And you shared that there were moves that you have not really gone to a class to learn the classical moves, but you said you have seen the moves, and I really believe you have, because your ancestors visioned you. I pray to God that your DNA always keeps screaming to you, and I know it will, because I need you. I need you next to me to guide and provoke me to the rigor of our work, because at times, it is a bit lonely, and it is a bit, dampening. But then to be present to artists like you, I just shake all that, status quo out. We need artists like you to show the path, to guide us, to write us, to dance with us, to walk with us, to create, dream, and envision with us. Thank you, Teo. Thank you. Can't find adequate words to express my gratitude to the work, and here's to another 100 years, and may your rigor keep going deeper, brother. Thank you. On behalf of all of us, I want to thank you so much.
Ashe, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Teo, for that wonderful session, and Dipankar for those closing reflections. For folks who are watching on HowlRound, we're going to give you a little taste of what's coming up next. We are live streaming through the weekend with HowlRound with more Institute sessions. So coming up tomorrow, we hope you will join us for this wonderful masterclass with Ebony Noel Golden, and that'll be on Sunday, December 5th, noon Central Time, 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And we also have a session after that with Asian American directors and devisers in conversation and practice, featuring Sumi Kim, Denise Uyehara, and Marlena Gonzalez. So we hope you will join us for both of those sessions, and stay connected with Pangea World Theater and Art to Action. Follow the National Institute. We want to thank our funders and all of our partners that we've had over the years, and all the amazing people that make this possible. And I want to give a shout out to our DJ Cotton for providing the music that you heard coming into the session and going out. And especially thank our funders, Doris Duke and the Mellon Foundation, for support for our virtual work this year, and HowlRound, of course, for live streaming. So we hope you'll stay with us. Follow Art to Action, follow Pangea World Theater on social media, and support if you can. And we hope to see you at upcoming sessions. Have a good night. y'all, or day, wherever you are, and we hope to see you soon.